Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. My name's Robert Whitelaw, and I am the Rebel Broker, licensed real estate broker right here in Santa Clara County, member of the National Association of Realtors. But please don't hold that against me. I've got an interesting show for you today. We are actually having Brent Bowers on the show with us today. Now, Brent is unique for a couple of reasons. One, he is appearing on the show for the second time. He appeared with us last year. And also, his focus is on vacant land, and it's what he got started with. I know a lot of folks consider vacant land that first step towards doing a bigger thing, like building something on that land, but that is not what Brent brings to the table. So let's go ahead and jump in. The interview is very informative and is a great way for folks to get started in investing in a way that I think is kind of interesting. So without any further ado, let's jump right into the interview. So in order to just sort of kick things off, I mean, one reason that I'm drawn to you, and just by the way, just so you know, you're the very first repeat guest I've ever had on the show. So I don't know if that's a dubious honor
That's amazing.
or a great one, but
Or
it's
maybe
yours for today.
I guess got some pit bull schedulers, I guess. I don't
That's
know.
right. But you know,
well.
I'd love to get sort of a since we've chatted with you before, I would love to get sort of a perspective on, and I know you're enthusiastic about lots. I actually have a lot for sale right now in the town where I'm in, and I would love to get your feedback on, do you feel that investing in lots is as lucrative today as it was a year ago when we last spoke? But before we jump into that, why don't you give us a quick rundown of who Brent Bowers is? Where did you start off? What brought you to where you are? And how did you sort of mature through this process?
Well, so good to see you again, Robert. And yes, I'm so enthusiastic. I'm actually more enthusiastic now about land than I was a year ago. Who is Brent Bowers? You know, I'm just a regular guy, barely was able to graduate high school, got my license in 2007. Ultimately, was a big quitter in 2009 because I couldn't hack it in real estate. Joined the military, did a couple combat deployments, and 2013, 14, 15, I started thinking like, I got to figure out how to get out of this military because I'm always away from home. This is not a way to sustain a family life.
Yeah.
First marriage failed because I was always gone. And found land investing early 2016. That first land deal I bought for $285. So the barrier of entry was so much lower for land than like a house, you know, where a lot of people start. Flipped it for $5,000, made some quick money, and then just kept rinsing and repeating and failing and making a bunch of mistakes and looking stupid. And, you know, and then it just kind of worked out to where we get payments a couple of times a day from land deals. And I'm just literally trying to tell the world about this because, you know, it's giving me financial freedom, time freedom. I did not set out to be a multi-millionaire in real estate. It just happened through land.
Yeah. Well, so to kind of take a step back, you can cut yourself a little slack. As someone who's been doing this for this year is my 35th year in real estate. In 2007, if you were a freshly minted green little still had your spots agent in 2007, you picked the worst year in human history to become a real estate agent. So, because that's when everything went completely nuts, right?
God has the best timing, I think.
Yeah. Well, the circumstances often dictate the path, right? So, and that adversity clearly put you in a direction that led to better things that fit well for you. Now, one thing I'd love, because one of the things that jumps into my head immediately is you talked about a lot you spent $250 on and you sold it for $5,000. What is your mindset or practice in terms of increasing the value of that lot? Or is it not about increasing the value of the lot? Is it simply being better at getting more eyeballs on it as a potential investment for other people?
You hit it right there, Robert. The latter, just getting the eyeballs on it. And let me correct, just so everyone knows, it wasn't $250. It was $285. That was a lot of money for me back then. You know, a lot of money for me back then. And, you know, it was really the back tax amount that the owner had on it. He's a retired CPA. This guy didn't want to have a tax bill.
Yeah.
And he wasn't broke. He just wanted to get this monkey off of his back. So I didn't add value to it. I literally just made a call to a real estate office and said, hey, what what can you list this thing for me for? Like, what's the blowout price? What's the get her done now price? Because I can't leave my money into this because, and I didn't tell her at the time, I'm broke. I just moved across the country, just had a baby. Like diapers and formula is unbelievable expensive.
Yeah.
So she's like, well, I don't know, maybe 10 grand. And then she made an offer to buy it. She lowballed me. She didn't think I would take it. I took it. I was so happy to, I mean, I don't even know what the return on investment was with that, but one day I had $285 into it. The next day I got 5 grand.
Yeah. So, and you sourced that through tax records?
Yeah, I called the county and I got a list of people that were behind on their taxes, the tax delinquent list. And I had to scrub that list. It was a big pain in the butt. There's way easier ways to do this.
Yeah.
The way I did it. But I hired a virtual assistant off of upwork.com for $5 an hour. I didn't vet this girl. I just sent her the thing. I sent her the facts that the tax collector, Florida, we call it tax collector. Colorado is actually called the tax or the county treasurer.
Right.
And if you're someone's listening to this, like, how do I get a list like that? Well, you just need to call your county and see who's in charge of making sure people pay their taxes on their properties. So she put in, my virtual assistant, Malika, she put in the schedule number, which is the APN or the assessor's property number. She put that into the assessor's website and she pulled out the name, the mailing address, if the land had an address or not, or just use the APN. And we sent a postcard to all those people.
So she manually had to parse the list of delinquents with APN numbers.
Yeah, I don't know what parse means, but I think that just means that she just
you take the APN number from the these people owe me taxes list and you plug that into their website to get their contact info.
Exactly. That's why I like talking to you, Robert. You have like $100 words. But yeah, it was so time consuming. It took her weeks. And this went from 600 documents, 600 pages down to 687 records. I would have lost my mind doing that. It cost me like $300. She had a way to, really spread it out. I did one, and I did a video with my computer.
Yeah.
I did it on Screencast-O-Matic. Your first 15 recordings are free. I mean, you can use Zoom to do the same thing. I showed her how to do it step by step. Then I put it in a Word document step by step. And then I told her, if you, do 10 of them and send it to me, I want to make sure it's right. And that was just a beautiful relationship. We still work together today.
Great. Well, that's a nice endorsement for Upwork. And I realize this is totally not what we're here to talk about. However, one of the revelations that came to me late in my career is be willing to let go of tasks to other people. You may be able to do them better, but not by a percentage difference enough to make it worth it for you to not delegate it to someone else.
Yeah. You're always going to do a better job, but how long will you sustain it? You should ask yourself every day, if you're a business owner or you're someone starting out, is there someone else that can do this?
Yeah.
And if so, how? And there's a great book called Who, Not How.
Yep.
By Dan Sullivan and Dr.
I wish I could reach over
Hardy.
and grab my copy, but it's upstairs.
I keep it beside me because it reminds me a lot. Like I was doing today, a task that I pay an executive assistant $18 an hour. She could have done it, but I was just like, I'm just going to get it done now. And that's wrong. That's totally wrong attitude when you're a business owner.
Yep, absolutely. And you know what? I think people don't, because I think this is part of a strategy that needs to be rolled into what you're talking about in terms of land investment. If you want to scale up what you're earning, you need to delegate to other people. Doing everything yourself does not scale. So you have to make it scale by taking on people to do the stuff that you can delegate to other people. And
you'll burn out
whole
too.
Pairing of APN numbers to people, that's a total let someone else do it job. So, all right. And what year was this that you did this first $285 deal?
2016.
Okay.
Not too long ago.
No, not that long
7 years ago.
Okay. All right. It's one of those things where sometimes getting that information you need is just one notch too hard. I could see that being an obstacle that would stop an awful lot of people from pursuing this just because it looks so daunting to have a list of
Yeah.
800 and something or whatever that you then have to go and try and get contact info for. Now, I'm guessing in terms of tools that you now have a process that makes that a lot easier.
Oh yeah, so much easier, and I can walk through it. You know, the one of the first things I teach in my land sharks community, I teach people how to do this. I love teaching veterans how to do this because I was a vet, or I was in the military trying to get out of the military. But we go on Redfin,
Hmm.
and we put it in the city that we're located. Because I mean, I recommend if you're getting started, maybe try this in your own backyard,
Yeah.
if possible, or somewhere you're familiar with. So we put in the city, let's say Orlando, Florida, and then we go to this is on Redfin.
Hmm.
Then we go to all filters and click all filters and then select land only, just the land. And then we scroll down and we select like the last 30 days or the last month, and then go back to Orlando, Florida and hit the X button. And then I want to zoom out on that map. I'm looking for clusters of solds. I want to find the land that's in demand. You know,
Right.
when I was just starting out, I was like, well, who would sell to me for really cheap? I've bought a lot of cheap land and it takes work to sell that stuff. I would prefer to get something that people want that's in demand. So once I find that little cluster like that, like if you're shooting your gun or playing darts and you hit the bullseye, you're looking, that's like my bullseye. Once I find that, I'm going to go down like, and let me tell you, if it's overwhelming, if there's too many lands that's selling, go down to 1 week. Like if you're looking in Florida, you're going to be overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So go down to 1 week and click on each one of those in that neighborhood. It's real estate is micro. Like you can't get too micro with it. You
No.
click on every single one of those that sold, and you want to know three things. One, what did it sell for? Two, how big is it? And three, scroll down a little bit more. Who it was listed by, who it was bought by, because those are the land sales specialists. Like
Yeah.
eventually you're going to see Robert. Robert is the number one guy in this neighborhood. I want to call Robert to help me when I get a land deal under contract. So now you know what the price per square foot is or price per acre that it's selling for. You can see the most in demand parcel size. You can see who the land sales specialist realtor is. Then you want to go to PropStream. Go to PropStream and pull a list of that neighborhood of those exact size parcels and mail every single one of them. I talked about the postcard. I
Hmm.
mean, if anybody wants a copy of that, go to the landsharks.com/postcard.
Okay.
And that's it.
No,
Those
that's
are the
awesome.
steps. Way easier than what I was doing.
Yeah, yeah, no, and it's one of those things where you can escalate as you go, right? So I realize that we're here talking specifically about flipping, where you want to get somebody who's not actively on the market, who might be interested in selling, to reach out to you first, and that's a strategy I like to encourage an awful lot of people do, and I realize most agents don't like to do that because that's sort of going outside the circle of love that real estate agents have for each other. Um, but frequently when times are bad, your best option is to say, all right, here's where I want to live. I mean, if we take that down to, instead of the investor, sort of just the home buyer, here's where I would like to live. Let me send notes to all of the owners here and let them know I'm interested in buying. Your house isn't on the market. How would you like to sell it without any of the fuss of actually fixing it up, getting it listed, putting a sign up, and letting people trounce through your house, right? Um,
Yeah.
in
Who doesn't want that? Like multiple people walking through, right?
Yeah, no, exactly right. And in this market, even today, where we've got a lot of challenges relating to financing and other types of things, there is still room for that strategy, both in residential real estate and obviously right here in lots. But I bet a lot of people don't think of lots as a flipping opportunity. I know in my world, primarily when I'm helping people buy a lot, it's to either build their house or
Yeah.
to build something that's going to be an investment. Um, how often do you find yourself now flipping 50-50, or do you find yourself always flipping, or do you find yourself
Yeah.
buying, improving, and then selling,
Yeah.
or
So it's
keeping it as a
about,
long-term investment?
yeah, I'm most of the time 80, well, just maybe 70% of the time, I am seller financing the
Oh,
land. So
okay.
it's more of a long-term payment plan to me, coming to me. That's where I get the payments for many, many years. That turns one land deal into paying me for multiple years to come. That's where the passive income comes from. That's
Gotcha.
where the time freedom comes from. And that's where really the financial freedom comes from. Because if I, like, for instance, one I just got under contract by we send out what's called land offer letters.
Hmm.
This is actually a purchase agreement that will go directly to you, Robert, for your land on 123 Main Street.
Sure.
It says, hey, I'll pay you $15,000 for the land. Sign it, send it back. I'll close in like 5 to 6 weeks. Well, we get those back all day long. And if anybody wants a copy of that, I've been triple split testing this against the postcards, against the check, and this purchase agreement. I call it my land offer letter, my LOL.
Yeah.
Is working by far the best out of all of them. And for your listeners, just go to the landsharks.com/LOL and you can download that and start sending it out today. Start taking action. But once they sign it, like I got one back just the other day, I have not even spoken to the seller except for over email.
Hmm.
And we actually had a couple emails back and forth because he wanted a different email address added to the purchase agreement. I was like, cool. So we are under contract, and I have special verbiage in there that I've added for my specific state. Now that's not on this that's not on this LOL, but
Yeah.
my realtor puts it right on the multiple listing service, and I don't even own it yet. Now the seller knows what I'm doing. They've been very clear about that.
Right.
But it says that I can do that as well. We already have an offer for 30,000 total, but the buyer is going to come up with enough of a down payment, roughly like 17,000, to cover the real estate fees, the closing cost, to pay my seller, and I'm going to have a note for the remaining amount. So
So at
just
that point,
call
you're
it.
wholesaling almost.
Yeah, pretty much. But now I'm going to get monthly payments on a $12,000 note with none of my own money into the deal.
See, and I think in terms of like timeliness, right? That part of it right there is, I think, part of the special sauce, the seller financing part of it.
Yeah.
With interest rates being where they are, what kind of seller financing are you offering to buyers for your lots right now?
I start at 12%. I
Okay.
ask for 12%. Do I always get it? No. Sometimes I get 9%. Sometimes I get 10%. And I'm going to give that buyer 30 years to pay me. And some
Oh,
people
wow.
like, they gloss over when I say that. They look at me like I have three noses. And here's the thing, 30-year mortgages were set up in the bank's favor. So for the first 7 years of a 30-year mortgage, it's pretty much all interest. So more than likely, this buyer is going to pay me off within like anywhere from 3 to 7 years because they're going to get a bank loan, they're going to build a house on it, or they're going to sell it because the market went up, or they're going to sell it because they're tired of it, or they're going to, let me take it back because they can't make the payments.
Right.
So one way or another, I'm going to pretty much collect interest only for about 3 to 7 years. And I'll give you an example. I sold a piece of land roughly 3.5 years ago. They just sold that land, and my note was $128,000, and the payoff $128,000 3.5 years ago. The payoff just the other day was $124,000. So do the
Wow.
math. It
Yeah.
only went down $4,000, and they paid $22,000 worth of payments.
Yeah.
So that gave me $667 a month for 36 or so months. And then they paid it off and they gave me a down payment. So it's all about just getting those consistent monthly payments, where a lot of people are like, I want cash. I don't
Yeah.
want cash.
Yeah. No, and I'm with you. The seller financing part can be so lucrative, and it really depends on your tack. Now, obviously, 12%, when we're talking about lots, I mean, 12%, depending on how much you're having people put down, can be lucrative, simply because in most cases with a regular bank, you're going to be putting down 50%. Um, so it's a way you're paying more in interest, but you're not having to come up with more upfront cash. And I even in my residential stuff, I'm strongly urging sellers to at least consider seller financing, just because that is so much of a hurdle for buyers. And even if the buyer decides, or the seller ultimately and then buyer decide not to do seller financing, just having in there that you're doing seller financing brings you so much more attention. It opens the door to all kinds of different stuff that can be awesome. So if anything, if you're not interested in land at all, if there's one thing you take away from this, today's show, I would strongly hope that it is at least thinking about seller financing as something that you can offer as a great incentive to get business rolling.
Yeah.
Um, Now, do you want to tell us a little bit about Land Sharks? I know we talked about it a little bit last time, but it's a great program for folks who might want to follow in your footsteps. Why don't you give us a quick rundown on what that has to offer for folks?
Well, thanks for asking that, Robert. And going back to the seller financing too, you're opening up your pool of buyers because Americans think, how much does it cost each month? A friend of mine just bought a brand new F-150.
Yeah.
I was like, man, how much did you have to pay for that? He goes, I don't know. It's like 700 a month. He has no clue what he's going to pay for it.
Well, and he's lucky if he's only paying 700 a month. The average is $1,000 a month right now.
Can you believe that? Yeah, he did. He had a trade in, and I think he had to put some down payment, but still, like, he didn't even know what he was paying for. It was like 700 something dollars a month. And I laughed, and he asked, "Why are you laughing?" I said, "That's exactly how Americans think
Yeah,
right
yeah.
there."
I hope he bought it on Memorial Day weekend because they had those magic loans. They for some vehicles they had 0% financing, which is the only way I would
Ooh.
ever buy a new car. So
Yeah,
anyway,
that's phenomenal. But
yeah.
how the Land Sharks works, I appreciate you asking. It's built on a series of small wins. I have recorded the videos to show people my exact land playbook from A to Z, 1 to 1,000, of exactly what I'm doing in my land business. I still do land, and I love teaching. I love seeing the wins, but guess what? There's way more money in land than there is coaching. So I've set it up to where we have the videos and we have weekly support calls. I've got other sharks doing support calls, and these guys are just giving back. They're not paid coaches. You get my cell phone number. I've got an assistant coach that's going to answer questions all day long for you. And it's amazing. Like we're I'm not going to do it on the show, but like anybody watching the video, I ring the victory bell whenever they get a deal. Like we're like ringing the heck out of this thing. So we got like Alana Cohen that just did her 7th land deal in New Jersey,
Oh
of
wow.
all the hardest, one of the hardest states to do real estate. She just did her 7th land deal, single mother of 4 children. Her 3rd land deal, she made $25,000 net profit.
That's
So this is
awesome.
doable for anybody. If I can do this, anybody can do this.
Yeah. Well, and it's just about there's so many things that feel outside the box to people that shouldn't. And in term, what's amazing is, we talk about buying a new car. In my mind, engaging at what you're talking about in terms of investing in land is less risky than doing that crazy $1,000 truck payment. So we have been sort of trained to be a-okay with crazy debt and all this other stuff. But when it comes to taking what is usually a much smaller amount of money and starting off with something like this, where you're getting
Mm-hmm.
something of value like land and then potentially finding someone else who would purchase it for more, it throws people off.
Yeah.
But I really hope we can kind of overcome that, and particularly through your site, through Land Sharks. I think that the techniques that are solid. I frequently get lobbied by people to bring folks on the show, and after I look at their program, I'm like, here are questions I will ask you. Are you sure you want to come on the show? And then they don't, because some of it's so dicey, right? It's so not realistic. And one thing I was impressed with your program was that it's absolutely doable. I'm more of a buy and hold guy, so maybe from a semi-emotional standpoint, I'd much rather buy it, improve it, put a house on it, whatever, and then see about making it a long-term rental or selling it. But either strategy works. Yours is more of a quicker turnaround. Mine is more of a bigger pain in the butt time investment, because construction always is. But and who knows? Maybe you do the Brent Bowers flip lots for 5 years, and you get to a level of comfort where now you're willing to expand that into other things. And I think it's a great stepping stone to build confidence, if nothing else.
Yeah, we actually build a house every year. I'm on my 3rd one now.
Oh wow, okay.
I do it with partners. I so we've done a modular and now 2 stick builds, and one of them was 2 of them have it with Dan Habercos. He's another land sharks. He's one of the first land sharks that came through, and he runs the whole construction side of things. But there's a pretty good profit on those. I think our first one, the one me and Alfredo did was $93,000 net profit that we split. And then the first one that Dan Habercos and I did, I think we didn't have much. We split about 40,000. And I say not much. That's terrible. I just said that. We both put about 20 grand in our pocket, and I have a few hours of work into it. If it wasn't for us finding the land for $1,000, we
Yeah,
wouldn't have even made that much, because it was right in that time when lumber skyrocketed. And
yeah,
the one we already got an offer on, I think we're going to split about, I don't know, 60,000. So 30,000 each for me to have. I don't know. I think about I have about 3 hours into it for the accounting,
yeah. That's
maybe.
great. And
So,
what are your thoughts? I mean, since you've done both, I'm a depending on what you want to use the land for, I'm a super fan of some of these crazy, like boxable, for instance.
oh
Get
yeah,
yourself,
those are amazing.
those are just like transformers, right? They come on the back of a regular 18 wheeler, so you don't have to get any special permits to transport them. They take a crane and they plop it on your pre-made foundation, plug everything in, and with
Mhm.
from the time they drop it off to the time you can live in it is what, like 4 hours or something.
That is phenomenal. I didn't know
Yeah,
they were putting them out yet. I saw them about a year ago and you could pre-order.
yeah. And for 30 grand. I mean, their basic level is 30 or 50 grand for their basic thing. Now, what are your thoughts on stick built versus modular? I'm also a fan of modular. Um, just because it tends to be smoother.
Yeah.
But I'd love your thoughts on that for other folks who might be traveling down this same road.
Definitely modular because it's built in a controlled environment. I've seen what the houses that Dan and I have built. You know, these snowstorms come and hit them, and your plywood's getting wet. More than likely, that modular home never got wet or snow on it or anything like that. And
Yeah,
you know, just what they're using to build these modulars now. And I'm the least educated guy on this. I prefer a land deal that I don't have to put anything on it because I have a lot of money tied up into these building projects where I can buy a piece of land for like 40,000. My mother-in-law loans me the money at 9% and I sell it for 90,000 and get a down payment the day we close on it. Like I prefer those because I have like no money into those. My building projects are a lot more capital intensive. They're way longer in my eyes.
yeah,
But there's a bigger payout too at the end, you know. Or I shouldn't say a bigger payout. It's a nice chunk. It's just another diversification, I guess.
yeah, yeah. And in terms of your criteria in selecting a lot, is it strictly, I know that area, I know that if a real estate agent was trying to sell it, they'd get about this amount. So I'm going to reach out directly and understand the difference between those two numbers and react accordingly? Or do you also include things like, well, I only want lots that are going to have water, power, and sewer at the lot line? Or do you not care about any of that stuff?
Are you talking about a general purchase of any and all land?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't care about any of that stuff.
Okay.
As long as I can make a profit on it, I'm going to offer a offer price, and if they accept it, it's a no brainer. It's going to make me money.
Okay.
I don't care if it's electric. You know, I generally like to be in an area where there's demand, so I can see solds happening.
Yeah.
Like I used to buy the land in the middle of nowhere, and I mean sometimes I get it for free. But you have to work a little harder to sell that land. And most like I want a realtor to be jumping up in the air ready to sell it for me.
Yeah.
So I don't care if there's electric or water or not, as long as there's land in the area selling.
Okay. And you haven't had any scenarios where the lack of any services or some specific services prevented you from getting what you wanted out of those?
Oh yeah, there's one I bought. And I thought I bought it for a super smoking hot price. And you do if you do up to 300, I mean, I've done I think 370 land deals at this point.
Wow.
You're gonna make a mistake
Sure.
on some, but I've got one that like if I just put a road to it, I would have already sold it. And that's maybe speaking out loud. Maybe I just need to do that. But I bought it for like 9,000. I thought it was going to sell for like 60,000.
Yeah.
It's been sitting there for like a year now.
Yeah.
So, you know, we just took it off the market and I'm just kind of debating on what I'm going to do with it. But it's like 7.5 acres in Colorado. I just got to finish putting the road in. And I don't mean like an asphalt road. I mean like I need to get a basically someone out there to grade it.
Yeah. 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 You got to hire someone with a grading machine to come in and do their thing for a day
Exactly.
or whatever. All right. Well, so and so anything, what I'd love to go into now is we've talked about some interesting things relating to land. What is something we haven't talked about that you think is something that's super important for people to know, particularly when they're just starting out?
Yeah, you know, pick a path and run with it. There's so much gold out there on these podcasts. I mean, you put it out all the time. You know, if you're listening to this on the way to work or at the gym, take a minute to write down a sentence or two of an action step that you're going to take and take the time to schedule it in your calendar or do it in the next 24 hours or maybe tonight when you put the kids to bed or tomorrow morning if you get up an hour earlier. Like if you're one of those people, you got to be at work at 9, you're not getting up till 8. oh man, you're missing the boat. Like, this is how I built my business. I would get up 2 hours prior to when I had to be on base at 6 a.m. I would be getting up at 4 a.m. and taking steps, building my business and doing income producing activities. What's an income producing activity? Talking to landowners or house owners or whatever the heck you're buying, and talking to buyers,
Yeah.
sellers and buyers, and just matching it up. So
Yeah.
take a couple minutes to write down a sentence or two, and take the next step to time block it, and the next step to actually implement it. Because here's the thing, like, you can collect knowledge for the rest of your life. It's not going to make you a penny.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of the other big hurdles. I'm one of the things I like to strive for is giving someone a clear path between where they are and where they can start getting more out of what they're doing. And your point is right on the money, right? And it's not even one of those things where you need to carve out 8 hours a day for this. This is even if you only carve out 4 hours a week, you can start to make progress with this process of getting further with your effort. And at some point, it starts to pay off. And it's not like you're having to reinvent something that hasn't already been done over and over and over. And then with something like Land Sharks that has almost a checklist, right? This is what I do today. This is what I do tomorrow. These are the things I need to do. And
Yeah.
it's worked so many times for so many other people. It makes it almost a no-brainer. I mean, obviously there may be in your immediate area not awesome opportunities. I mean, I think the cheapest lot I've seen within 30 miles of my house is, you know, I think it was 200 something $1,000.
There you go.
And then there was one lot for, I think, $30,000 that was completely unbuildable because it wasn't wide enough. But, that's the stuff we find here in California where things are a little bit nuts,
And
but,
maybe the neighbor will buy that.
and maybe
Maybe
so.
the neighbor,
Yeah, exactly right. Go to the neighbors on either side and ask them if they'd like to increase the
Exactly.
size of their lot.
That's
Um,
right. I mean,
and you
we
don't have
all
to wait
want
till you
more
own
land.
it to do that and have that conversation. So,
That's true. We
yeah.
all want more land. I talked about the 58 acre or the 50, I think it was before we hit record. The 50 something acres I have in Colorado.
Hmm.
When I lived in that house, I was looking at the 40 acres next door to me and the 40 acres across the street, and I wanted them both. Like,
Yeah.
why did I need that extra land? Like, but that was just something I wanted to increase my land size. And
Yeah. Yeah.
most people think the same way.
Yeah. They want to have that elbow room, right? Or depending on who you're talking to, right? And it could be simply, I just don't want anything to ever be put there that will annoy me, right?
Yes, yes, so true. Like, we have
Yeah.
our lake house. A couple months ago, we were there, and I told my wife, I was like, we got to buy the land across the street because that will ruin our sunsets if someone builds a house there.
Yeah.
And it's like an eagle, like there's all these eagles, bald eagles over there. And we looked up who owned it, and the whole street was owned by like I think it was the same Asian family, and their mailing address was like in Asian. I was like, how do we get in touch with these guys? I
Yeah.
know they're never going to sell it to us, but you can try.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't, yeah. And maybe it's the fear of rejection or I don't know what it is. I mean, the worst case scenario is you reach out to someone and they tell you they either don't respond or they laugh at you, I guess is the biggest worry.
Yeah.
It's so low stress, and maybe that's something that just gets people going. They want to be very conflict resistant and not really kind of get into that stuff. But speaking as someone who is in an industry where that is considered to be very common, it happens far less than you think if you're not a jerk, right?
Yeah.
If you're just a respectful person saying, "Hey, I have this going on. Would you be interested?" I find that 9 times out of 10 people respond very reasonably, and it's very rare you get that really crazy hair on fire person who wants to run around in circles and scream at you about what you've just suggested.
That's such a good point, Robert. I do it with my lenders when I'm always looking for new lenders that want to
Yeah,
come in and stay out of the stock market. So when I see guys at the gym, I go to the gym usually about 9 in the morning because that's when the rich, wealthy, retired guys come in.
yeah,
And I'll say, hey, Robert, you wouldn't know anybody wanting to lend on some land, would you? I usually buy it at like 50 cents on the dollar. And we secure it with the first lien. It's like not scary like the stock market. Well,
yeah,
maybe I'd be interested. Really?
yeah.
Why would
Wow,
you
what a
want to lend on
surprise.
land?
Yeah,
But
just
if he
yeah,
rejected me, it's because I was asking if he knew somebody, or she rejected me. Like, it's not a direct reject to me because I wasn't asking you, Robert, to lend with me. I was asking if you knew anybody.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then I don't want to disappoint anyone who may live in a market similar to mine where prices are so nuts, but if you go south of me or east of me, you're going to start to find deals like what Brent's talking about, where you're not going to have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a lot. You're going to be able to spend 200, 300, $400. Is it going to be that crazy Class A $5 million neighborhood here in San Jose or Morgan Hill or Gilroy or Palo Alto? No, it's not. But it doesn't need to be. It's a game where you're doing what Brent is doing, where you're not buying it at market, you're buying it below market.
That's the name of the game. That's so
Yeah,
true.
yeah, and then you find what you can.
And in
All
those
right.
expensive markets, like I've done some deals in the more expensive areas, you don't need as big of a discount. Like if you got that at like 85 cents on the dollar, there's still profit in that.
Yeah,
If you sell it to someone for 95 cents on the dollar.
yeah, yeah, yeah. All right. Well, hey, I appreciate you being so generous with your time. If folks want to find you, where are the best places to reach out and find Brent Bowers?
Yeah, super easy. You can go to my TikTok, Brent L Bowers 1, or my YouTube, Brent L Bowers, or my Instagram, Brent L Bowers 1. Heck, give me a call, 863-801-6959. Leave a voicemail if I don't answer, or text me. I'll get back to you.
All right, that sounds great. I appreciate you spending so much time with us, Brent. It's always great to talk to you. And I look forward to talking to you next time to get an update on what's going on in the land world.
God bless, Robert. Enjoy
Thanks.
that beautiful weather out
I
there.
will. I will. Now, I certainly hope all of you saw that as just another vector, right? Another direction from which you could attack achieving your real estate goals. I really like Brent's approach. It's simple. There's not a lot of complicated stuff going on there. And I think that just about anyone could jump in and begin to make things happen in that segment of the marketplace. If you just get a few deals under your belt where you've reached out, you're building so many skills that help you in real estate by sort of doing the off-market checking and reaching out to owners directly for off-market properties. You're developing those communication skills as they relate specifically to real estate. You're finding out ways to locate those properties, get the information you need to move forward. And then once you've got them, moving on to folks who are going to want to purchase them at market level, and you not even doing the work, you working with a real estate agent to potentially do that stuff for you. Now, as always, the goal is to leave you with more knowledge on the table. I hope we've achieved that this week. Of course, it's always the goal, so I'm hoping we did it. I do appreciate you spending your valuable time with me. Thanks again for listening, and we'll talk to you all next time.